Hello and welcome to this pit stop for Mask of Nyarlathotep. This is an expansion for the Eldritch horror base game coming from Fantasy Flight Games. In Mask of Nyarlathotep, you are going to get many things, but unusually for a big box expansion, there's no extra map board. But what do we get? There are two extra ancient ones. You've got Nyarlathotep themselves. Now their focus is very much on the new corruption condition, and many of their adventures are going to give those to the investigators, in which Eldritch horror tokens are built up, and they're going to be very punishing to you when that triggers, depending on how many of those you have got. The mysteries for Nyarlathotep are based around these adventure cards. Now these are sets of 3 linked encounters, for example the Brotherhood of the Dark Pharaoh, and they will tell something you have to do to resolve this, and you move on to the second stage and then onto the third stage, and it makes the mythos cards broken up but themed, and you're going to follow a story through. And there are also encounters which may bring these into play when that particular ancient one is not in play. Antediluvium is not an ancient one in themselves. This is all about the Order of the Rising Stars, and it's about cultists in the ancient places of the world like Hyperborea or Atlantis, which come into play by new gate tokens, and they're attempting to actually raise Cthulhu, and that's will come into play if we don't resolve that by the time the Doom track gets all the way to the bottom. So slightly different, and again they're based around these new Mystic Runes encounters. This will always be in play, and you can go to them at any time, but by resolving them is how you're going to advance most of the cards, the mystery cards for Antediluvium. You're going to get additions to all the usual things, like you've got new artifacts, you've got new items, unique items, conditions, spells, normal encounters, and of course the mythos cards. There is only one room or extra one coming though, but that is again linked to the corruption mechanism and condition you can get, which will constantly be adding corruption and driving you crazy. There are a whole bunch of new prelude cards, including, as you'd expect, 2, which will bring many of the conditions into play. When you don't have Antediluvium and Nyarlathotep in play, it will allow you to use the components from this new expansion. There's a new action you can take. You can gather resources. You can take one at a time, you can hold a maximum of 2, and these have various effects. Firstly, when you're resting, you can spend them to get additional health or sanity. When you're acquiring assets, you can spend them as extra successes. And also, a lot of the encounter cards that you come across will allow you to spend resources or require you to in order to resolve them successfully. And a lot of these encounter cards also seem linked to famous personalities of the day. For example, you can go to Sydney and improve your cricket from Don Bradman, and there's a few other names you may or may not recognise. You do get 7 new investigators, bringing the total in the game up to 55. And some examples are Agatha Crane, who's a parapsychologist who's very good at rituals and tomes and good at passing law tests. You've got Daniela Reyes, who's very much linked into the gather resources and gets them when she rests and when she acquires assets and can spend them to get clues. You've got Preston Fairmont, the millionaire, who will allow you to acquire assets or gather resources when you're with them, and also can recover sanity by acquiring assets and has got a massive 5 influence. My personal favourite from the whole set, Father Mateo. He can give away boon conditions, which he's going to gain because every time he closes a gate, he gains a boon. So he can help boost everyone up by doing that. There are more: Safina the Painter, Calvin the Haunted, Carson the Butler. As well as being new investigators, there's a new mechanism for investigators. And in this 110 card deck, there are 2 cards for every single investigator you can get now with all the expansions. And they tell you a personal mission for each of the investigators. In this case, Agatha Crane's got the scientific method because she's supposed to be a skeptic. She's got to do something during the course of the game in order to get herself a positive effect, a rational explanation, and then she'll be boosted for the rest. If she doesn't do whatever it is, and in this case she has to get clues and spend them, and before her sanity drops down low, she's going to turn into a superstitious, and that will give her something that will hinder her throughout the rest of the game. And there's an individual set of these cards for each of the investigators. Now, the last thing this comes with are campaign rules for the game. Now, there are no components linked to this. It's just a recommendation of how you can play 6 games in a row. And basically it limits it to 16 of the ancient ones. And whenever you're playing the ancient ones, you line them up in a row, and you're going to play with 2 preludes every time you play. And there are suggested preludes that you have to use depending upon which one you are encountering. Any investigators that are devoured or defeated are going to be out, and you can't choose them for subsequent games in the campaign. Any dark pack conditions or promises of powers that you get are going to be retained from game to game. Whatever has happened to your personal mission is going to be retained from game to game. And any cities that have been ruined, using the cities in ruin expansion things, are going to also be ruined for the rest of the game. But that's it. Other than that, it's just 6 games that you play in a row and you say they're linked and you try and do the best you can. This has been a pit stop for Masks of Nyarlathotep, an expansion for Eldritch Horror. For more videos like this, check out the Game Pit channel on YouTube, and for more in-depth coverage of gaming, please find the Game Pit podcast. Thank you.